So then let's get into what's actually dropped off here. This is really important for people to understand. The fiscal year end for the government of Canada is March 31st. Okay. So March 31st. And in every year, they give you an estimate of the budget. Okay. But I want you to understand the timeline. Okay. So every year in March or April, they give an update of the budget is what they do. Okay. So the timeline for that is like basically when they're commenting on the 2024 fiscal year in March, and in this case, it was delivered in April, like mid-April. It was April 15th, I believe. They're talking about the budget, but that's a period that's already happened. Now the ink's barely dry on any of the accounting and reporting, but it is dry. They're not actually talking about a forward-looking period. So when they deliver their projections for 2024, they're delivering a projection for a period that's already happened. So the degree of accuracy on that should be really high. Like, for example, we do fractional CFO work, and every single month for our fractional CFO clients, in the third and fourth weeks of the month, we're reviewing their monthly reports from the prior month. Everyone's on a bi-weekly pay schedule and cash disbursement schedule. So by the third week, we've already done the latest cash disbursements. So the monthly reports are pretty good at that point. When we're looking at the third week, once we get around here to the third week of December, right after this meeting, I'm going to be doing monthly reports with companies for November. And that's what we're going to be talking about. And that's why we do it then, because usually you get pretty good numbers, right? And these are small businesses. They don't have the resources that the government of Canada has to do their reporting, okay? So this budget document that I'm talking about here, this budget document, I'll get the exact date here. This budget document was released on April 14th. So on April 14th, they're talking about what the projections are, and they have the underline on the projections, and they have the prior year for comparative here that's not under the underline. So this right here, this is the period ending March 31st. Okay, that's important for people to understand. It's March 31st. So when they give it on April 14th, it's already happened. Now, it's challenging to this is why you don't release financial statements usually in the first month. Like there's things that we have to test to make sure we got things in the right period, but you should have a pretty darn good idea, because you're not projecting what's going to happen in the next year or a year after that. You're projecting for something that's already you have interim reporting systems available. Okay. And so I went through and reviewed I actually just went through and reviewed the budget, because when I hear they're, $20 billion off, I mean, my first thing was I asked Trevor, Trevor, do you have the $20 billion?
Last time I checked, I did not have that $20 billion in my account. Maybe it's in my other pants. Maybe it's in the other Randy's pants.
Randy's pants. So once I figured out the $20 billion, and once I figured out that Trevor did not have the $20 billion, I better look into this. And so I actually want to see the budget, if it's actually, if it actually lined up, because in the fiscal update or the financial statements, they show the comparison with the budget, and I want to see if it actually lined up. It did, okay? But at this point, I wasn't giving him that much credit. I actually wanted to see if it did line up, but it did, okay? But then it's really important to understand, it's like the budget itself, 430 pages. That's the budget on April 14th, right? And this is important for people to understand. It's like they spent another 158 pages delivering a supplement for statements and impacts to report on gender, diversity, and inclusion. Ooh. Another 158 pages supplement to the budget. And this will come I think I don't know why you need 700 pages to deliver the budget, because brevity is the soul of wit, is what Shakespeare would say. 700 pages aren't necessarily better, but it's important to understand, because what we're going to find out here is the diversity and inclusion is at the crux of this whole issue. So they did not just consider it; they spent 158 pages commenting on this. Okay. And then, of course, they combine it with another 76 pages on the tax measures. All of this for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. This was delivered after that, April 14th, 2024. Now we fast forward to the financial report, okay? The financial report that was delivered on December 16th, okay? In fact, like the actual economic statement looks like on the government website as the 16th, and the financial report looks like the 17th, but there's a lot of chaos and confusion. Who knows? Like maybe it was the 16th, maybe it was the 17th. Not important, really. The important part is like also understand if you own a business in Canada, if you own a private business in Canada, whether that's a small corporation or a big corporation, you're required to file your tax return within 6 months of the year end. So if you have a March year end, you are required by law to file your tax return on September 30th. You cannot just call up CRA and say, because of a filibuster, I can't file it. That's not how it works for private businesses. They can't just push it down the road, October, November, December, 2.5 months down the road. So the fact that, meeting that September deadline, it's like even giving it in October, in my mind, historically they'd put up with, delivering in October is kind of weird because, you're basically, putting a bigger degree of onus on private businesses than the government of Canada with all the resources can do themselves. And so keep in mind, it's like now we're, well beyond the 6 months where October, November, December, we're 8.5 months past the year end before we're actually reporting on anything.
Well, you'd think with all of the, public sector jobs that they added in, they could, throw a few bodies at this thing.
Yes.
And get it ready to report, right?
Yeah. And so if you want to, parse through the budget, it's like, okay, it's a long read. So when you get the budget, go to page 380 on the budget. And once you get to page 380, you'll get the outlook for the revenues. And you get to page 385, and you'll get the outlook for expenses, okay? And really, they should start with that because that's the most important thing. This is a budget. Let's actually get to the numbers before, we get hundreds of pages of analysis before anybody actually has any numbers. But that's where you actually start getting the numbers, okay? I think my head will explode if I go through the 158 pages of gender diversity and inclusion. So, I'm not doing that today. So, okay, and then the tax measures of 76 pages. So now we get to the annual financial report, and it's going to make more sense if I give you the annual financial report first. Okay, so even the annual financial report, it's here's a critical factor. The actual annual financial report is only 44 pages. Finally, we actually get a document that with some brevity in it. So something that's somewhat concise that we can actually look at. It's 44 pages, and you get to page 15 on the document, and it's going to compare the revenues and expenses, the actual revenue and expenses for the year ending March 31st versus the budgeted expenses for the year ending March 31st. Keep in mind, the budget was set after the year end. It should be good, okay? It should be fairly concise. And you go through it, and there's always some minor differences, and I say minor, okay, you have differences in personal income tax, 217 billion in tax revenue generated versus 222 billion. Okay, the economy did slow down. I got it. The economy slowed down, but they knew that in April when they reported it. Okay, so it's it's a little bit even a misstatement like that of almost $5 billion is that's a big number. That's kind of a big number. Okay. So you get to the total revenue from personal and corporate and non-resident tax, and the tax generated was pretty much $6 billion less than what they were projecting. Okay. But then as you keep getting down to the total revenues, so all of the revenues, once we factor in our GST, our favored energy taxes that we talk so much about, the carbon taxes, you get to total revenues of 459 billion actual versus 465 projected after the year end. So the actual 8.5 months year end versus the projected, which was 14 days after the year end. Okay. Okay. Now you get to program expenses and start looking at some of these program expenses. Elderly benefits at $76 billion, almost bang on. The budget said $75.9 billion. Okay. We get to employment insurance support measures, 23 versus 23 expected. Children benefits, 26 versus 26. COVID-19 income support for workers. So thank goodness they clawed back $4.8 billion of those CEBA loans, because those small businesses need to pay those back because they didn't have any damages at all. After being shut down for 2.5 years for our wonderful COVID policies, and all the workers that they chased around for their CERB, right? The 75 million CRA workers chasing around the $4.8 billion in CEBA repayments. But okay, so they got that back. They came in on those major transfers to persons, $120 billion. You start getting down support for health and other social programs, and like this is my favorite. It's like they just label it other direct program expenses, $236 billion. So of program expenses totaling 466, they choose to itemize 230 of them and lump 236 billion into one line item, other direct program expenses.
Other.
It's like, this is like the things, like as a rookie CPA, it's like sometimes you get like the clearing account. It's like, I'm looking at, financial statements that are, and like you'll get dumb items. So you'll get like I look at this as like you get a dumb item of like, maybe you have two things that are 0.2 billion, right?
Yeah.
Or on a financial statement, let's say you've got telephone and utilities, and your telephone is $700 and the utilities is $4,800 and the revenue for the corporation is $800,000. And I'm going to say that is not meaningful. Group those together. Like we just want one utility line. Like let's not convolute those financial statements. But then you get, same financial statements with $800,000 of revenue. It just has office $87,000. We don't know what it is. It's
so
the biggest finance.
Hookers and blow.
That's right.
Like what's going on with the other department?
My first instructions to the new graduate accountants, like we need some more detail on those financial statements before we release it to Bob, who's paying $6,000 a year on this. Never mind to the government of Canada, like that are paying billions and billions of dollars a year for these reporting.
Billions.
It's like, but it's just sitting there at $236 billion in other. Love it. Okay. So, and that's where you see there was 200, and the problems continue because it's not just other on budget, it's other, all of the misstatements in other. So $236 billion was the actual other direct program expenses versus $219 billion that was projected. Again, projected after the year end had happened. They should have understood it. Okay.